So this exhibition on piñatas is one that we took from a gallery in Los Angeles called Craft in America. But that gallery is quite a lot smaller than Mingei International, so we were able to think about how we wanted to expand the show, and we made some pretty nice commissions, including the 17-foot lowrider piñata car, which is fairly dazzling. This show suits our mission so perfectly because we are art of the people. That's what Mingei means. And so we show things that are handmade, used in everyday life, things that people recognize and are familiar with. So the piñata is something that is in everyone's life, but these artists have taken it to an entirely new level. There are piñata paintings, the car, there's a swarm of tiny monarch butterflies. They've each just taken it. There's a President Trump piñata. But what we've seen after we opened this show is that just that wonderful sign of recognition when people walk in the door and they see that something in their lives, a craft in their lives, is worthy of celebration. So the interesting thing about these piñatas is the history of them. We think of them in Mexico and really embedded in Mexican tradition. But evidently it started way back in China with the practice of cracking a clay ox that was full of seeds. So it was connected to springtime and planting and breaking something open for seeds to come out. And then it traveled this long route from China through trade to Italy, then from Italy to Spain. It got caught up in the Catholic Church. The seven-pointed star that you see tied up with the seven deadly sins and smashing the seven deadly sins. Then it got all embedded in popular culture in the New World in Mexico. So just this long history of, and really sometimes fairly political. We think of piñatas just as party toys, but like the Trump piñata here, there have long been political figures that people have wanted to smash. These artists have created things that are going to be permanent. They're going to last. They felt, and we feel, that the art form, working with paper, working with the idea that history of smashing and impermanence, maybe we should look at the art form. Maybe we should not smash it, but keep that as part of its memory of what it has been. All of the artists in this show that was organized in Los Angeles by Emily Zayden, all of these artists live north of the border. Some are binational. But given that piñatas, as we know them, originate in Mexico, I wanted to go and see how does piñata making work there? What is the system? What is the market? How do people shop for them? What are the lineages of people who make them? You see, we bought these two, and we bought the clay pot. There's a photograph of the woman that we visited. And you can see in her little bodega, there's a clay pot, and she made them right in front of our eyes. It was really fun. See the little house. That artist, was really thinking about gentrification. He was thinking about how Latino people are getting edged out of neighborhoods as they get more desirable. And so he made these little, they're called sad houses, casita triste. And he placed them in neighborhoods outdoors, and of course they just slowly disintegrate, his sad little houses. But really, housing is a major issue, especially in San Diego, in a lot of different cities, and it's becoming unaffordable for many people. And then you have this woman, Yesenia Prieto, who's thinking about how we're chained to money. We're chained to the need to make money. And so she created these large hands. Maybe you saw two of them downstairs, and this one holding the coin. So in her practice, she makes piñatas both for the market to get smashed, but also as art piñatas that will have permanence. See the one that's performing there? So he's made piñata, that's Josue Ramirez, piñata costumes, and he's wearing it, writhing around. From Los Angeles. She made a laptop because her kids were so sick of Zoom class during the pandemic. So she made a laptop that, they probably wanted to smash it, but they didn't. And then, of course, the monarch is a symbol. The migration of the monarchs to Mexico happens at around the same time of Day of the Dead. So monarchs are tied to the idea of returning spirits. Here is a girl in her quinceañera dress, and her beautiful daughter came to the opening with her and looked just like the pretty girl in this piñata. Hundreds of monarch butterflies and hummingbirds who are considered messengers by this artist, Isaías Rodriguez. And we had to really, he made several visits here so that we could plan out how is this going to work. There was his vision that he wanted people to be able to walk underneath this swarm and look up into it and be in it. And of course for us, that's a living nightmare, to have things within arm's reach. And this is a show that's very appealing to kids and families. And they make a beeline. And the first thing they want to do is grab and touch. He doesn't mind that so much. It's harder for us. But we worked very closely with him, and we tried to help him realize his vision as he wanted it to be. And our designer came up with where to suspend those grids and the platform. And recently we had December Nights, which is a big festival in Balboa Park, big winter festival. One night we had 1,700 people in the building. It was very crowded. And it was so delightful to watch people come up here and just immediately gravitate toward certain installations and want to do exactly what the artist thought they would want to do, which is stand under those butterflies and just look up and be surrounded by them. That's very gratifying, His work is so precise and careful, and here he's influenced by the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch, these animals that are transforming, and look at the incredible work on this bird's feathers. You just can't imagine how did he achieve that. Diana Benavides, who started working here after we decided to take this show, this is all her work. This rosary, these tennis shoes, which I love. She's commenting here on what are the realities of being a woman in our society. Es muy noche para andar sola. It's late to be out walking alone, is what those shoes say. And so she's thinking about what do women have to think about if they've been out with the girls or out for a night and they're wearing heels, or they're wearing something that if they had to make a run for it, you have to be ready, you have to be alert. So she did these wonderful minty green tennis shoes and these keys, which many parents teach their daughters that if you're out alone and you feel unsafe, you can hold your keys in such a way that it forms a little weapon, probably not terribly effective. And then she did this incredible series about the border and people who live a life on that border or both sides of the border. So these are the patrol cars, there's the drone. This set of works is about the border wall that President Trump wanted to build. The group of artists created a big piñata wall, and then they smashed it. And so what you see on the wall are the remnants of that smashed wall. What's interesting to me is that this part about the wall backs up against the butterflies that are flying over the wall. And butterflies are also a symbol of dreamers. So it's just kind of an interesting lineup. So this artist that we're walking toward, Justin Favela, is based in Las Vegas. And of course, he made this for our show. This was not in the show in Los Angeles. I've known about his work for a long time, always hoped that there would be a reason to work with him, and along came this show, and he was up for it. He was interested, and he researched San Diego lowrider culture. There are several scholars here who have written books, who know the history of particular cars, and so he got to work. And this car is revealing, there's one particular car in San Diego that's gone through multiple complete, what would you call it? Redesigns. The exterior gets repainted and renamed and readorned. And so his art car incorporates all 4 versions of this very famous car from San Diego. And then Justin also did this marvelous white tiger since he's in Los Angeles. And of course, around the big shows, Siegfried and Roy and their white tiger, he did that sort of quintessential gold blanket, looks like a shag rug. It's all out of paper. And so we always try in this museum to create opportunities for people to make while they're here. So we created this community piñata wall with a jackrabbit and some foliage and flowers, and people can poke the paper in and help us finish our piñata wall. This is a show that obviously came to us, but we modified it significantly. Opposite, on that side of the gallery, is the first show I curated after I came here almost 1 year ago now, last January. Entirely from a collection of folk art donated by one couple, Charmaine and Maurice Kaplan. The themes in this exhibition really fell into some pretty clear columns. A good group of the artists were thinking about nature, not necessarily in a romantic way, but when you have to work out in nature as opposed to weekend hikes or trips to the beach, nature can have a menacing quality. But this marvelous quilt on the back wall came to us from Pat Nichols. It's a very traditional pattern coming out of the log cabin pattern tradition, but this one is called Log Cabin Sun and Shadows. So really thinking about the play of light on architecture and how that changes throughout the day. I love that quilt. I love the colors. I just think it's marvelous. Then you have a lot of biblical themes coming out of the South. You have this self-taught artist, Herbert Singleton, who is looking at themes of redemption. He's a person who spent some time in prison, and so after he got out of prison, he was thinking about those themes. So you see David and Goliath there, theme of the underdog, and then you have the prodigal son, thinking about forgiveness. He did a lot of cautionary tales. This is the modern day Adam and Eve with all the various temptations that people face in their modern lives. Then you have these marvelous Angels and Devils by Fred Webster, who was from Fayette, Alabama, very close to where I worked at the Birmingham Museum of Art. So here you can see these two choirs facing each other. Who's going to be victorious? But this is a man, most of these artists had to do other things. They had to teach or farm or some tobacco farmers. Mr. Webster was a school principal, and he worked his whole life. And then when he retired and had those empty hours, he wanted to fill that with something creative, and he went to the John Campbell Folk School to learn carving. Bible study and church life is so strong in the South, and those stories that you grow up with, that everyone kind of at least knows part of. He started carving biblical subject matter, and that's when he just hit his stride, and people just couldn't get enough because everyone recognized those stories. What we do a lot of here, and what I hope to continue to do, is feature living artists, because when an artist can come in and speak for him or herself, speak for his or her culture, do a demonstration, that's what really captures people. We have an enormous permanent collection here to draw upon, 25,000 objects, really from all over the world. And they're exquisite. Baskets and pots and painted screens, things that furniture, stools, headrests, these are things that people used in their everyday lives. They're things that were made to be traded or bought and sold. So we don't face that same issue that some museums are facing, where was this ever meant to leave the hands of the culture? These things that we collect were made to be traded and bought and sold. And really, since we do have art from all over the world, we always try and consult people from the communities that we're featuring. We don't ever do a show that doesn't consult people. And that's why we're so community driven. We really prioritize those relationships. They're so important to us. This horse is made by a Huichol artist from Mexico, as was the globe. A bead museum in Prescott, Arizona that closed its doors, and through arrangements it was transferred to us. Thousands of beads were transferred to us. So we dedicated this space, and we have these beautiful cases that allow you to open a drawer and see more, just lets us show more things. This show was curated by our collections manager, Emily Brown, who worked very closely processing that huge acquisition, so she knew it very well. That's a Sioux cradleboard cover there. Beads are just all over the world, made of all kinds of materials, and that's what her installation really explores. What are beads made of, and why? What did people have access to in different cultures? From animal claws and teeth to ground up recycled glass, every material you can imagine. This is now open to the public. People can come in, they can use the library. We have programs in there. We have maker programs, we have presentations. So it's really become a very active space in the museum.
It's from Jaipur, India. It's made of camphor wood. It's not ivory. And it really is, it's called Palace of the Winds, but it's in quotes because it's a fantastical view. For instance, it's an artist's rendition of probably several palaces in India brought together. So the actual Palace of the Winds is pink, whereas this one is not. And also the architectural features are different from the Palace of the Winds, and this would have been an artist's rendition. It's very hot in India, so the women who lived in the palace would utilize the balconies in order to look out, but also, you know, have that air from the internal structure. And it's called the Zanana.
The Zanana is where the women live. And that's good because they have the breezes coming through up there, and they have full access to street watching. They don't have to be veiled. They can just look through. But all the children, when they look at it, find that little chink. And it's camphor wood, and camphor wood is extremely heavy.
It's very unusual for a museum to have a library that's this accessible. So the executive team, when we were doing our remodel, made a decision to move the library to the second floor. Originally it was on the lower level of the museum and not very accessible. So the idea was to have the library also function as an extension of our gallery spaces, so that people would come out of the galleries and then come into the library interested in, you know, studying or just enjoying the space too. So we do have artwork in here, of course we have that piece, but we also, our tables and our desks are artwork as well. So this is created by George Nakashima and Mira Nakashima, and they have a studio in New Hope, Pennsylvania. And George Nakashima has since passed away, but his daughter now runs the company. The library has, you know, a lot of art reference materials. We probably have more than 12,000 art reference materials if we count all our archives and our periodicals and our books. And we're really focused on folk art, craft, and design. So we have a very specialized collection. There were a lot of books that we already had because our museum library's been with us since the museum started, even though it started very small. And we received books by donation and purchase. And then we also acquire books on what we have a collection policy, and then we have areas that we also collect in, so that we want to grow. And that also will mirror what we're collecting for the object collection. But we also have books that are not necessarily just about the objects here in the museum. We have things that represent titles from all over the world and cultures all over the world. We always have a running wish list, and what's interesting too is because the library is open to the public now, people will tell us where there are gaps, because they'll come in and they'll look for something, right, and they'll be like, do you have something on XYZ? And that helps us immensely, because sometimes we don't even really, you can research a lot of things, but we can't be experts in every single part of the world and every single kind of art. So people will let us know that, and that's been extremely helpful and extremely enlightening. So I love that. And sometimes maybe there isn't a lot of information on that particular art form, and then that helps us realize, oh, well, that's something to keep an eye out for. I mean, we literally have people come and, you know, we noticed that you don't have this. There's a book on this. Would you like to have it? I mean, literally. So it's really great.
The view is just spectacular. You can turn around and look back that way. So we call this plaza level the living room of Balboa Park. That's our hope, that people will feel comfortable walking in and resting. There are places to sit. You can plug in your laptop, recharge your phone. You can have something to eat, 2 places to eat. And on this level, you'll always see some reference to what is upstairs. So here we have this creature, this giant burro that has been over time decorated and decorated and decorated. Always trying to have a maker activity down here. But we also try and just give a sense of the range of Mingei's collection. So we show textiles from around the world. On this back wall, there's a collection of shop signs from around the world. This is an installation just of blackware pottery from throughout the Americas, from the Pueblos to Oaxaca, Mexico, and down into Peru. There's a whole case of toys from around the world. This is all objects associated with tea making. And it just gives you, here we have some folk art from Mexico. We have clothing from around the world. So we hope that this level, where you can just come and relax and shop and eat, will also inspire and give you a sense of what this place is about, which is the art of the everyday, the art of the familiar. There's something to put your hands on every day. Doors open, and you can have your program both outdoors and indoors. And this space is really important to our mission because we offer it to the community. We have something called Community Mondays, where any group in San Diego can request to use this room for their cultural event. It doesn't have to be anything related to us or our mission. And we offer it, and then the hope is that we meet those friends, and then those friends can be involved in our process of exhibition planning. So we have groups from San Diego, as you know, very international community. We have international groups come, they have their cultural festivals. If we need the room to be dark, that curtain, as you can see, swings around, and you can either have it with its blue backing, or it can be just the cutout flowers, which form beautiful shadows on the floor. This is Griselle, my coworker Griselle, who's processing these. These are Leslie Graves textiles. Yeah.
We are following up process from pest control, and these are going into our inventory for reviewing. So right now we're vacuuming after they're rested from their freezing cycle. And then Emily is taking picture measurements and filling up more of their information. It's 2 rounds of 48 hours, I believe. So it's 2 rounds of 48 hours in the freezer. The first round, after the first round is completed, we let them rest for 24 hours. And then after the second round is completed, again, we let them rest for 24 hours before we actually open them up and start vacuuming. So there are times where we have glass beads or metal elements into our objects, so those can't be freezed. So it depends on their composition, and it also depends on their condition.
This donation has so far 976 and counting. We've cataloged 976 so far. We've frozen a fair amount of them, not nearly as many. We've only frozen the ones that we've seen like insect debris or frass or eggs or things like that. So the first freezer, so ideally you would kill any like living eggs or bugs in the first freezer cycle, but you do a second one just in case, because sometimes they go dormant. So instead of actually killing whatever organism, sometimes it'll just like go to sleep or go dormant. So you do a second cycle to make sure that if anything did go dormant and didn't get killed, then it eliminates. I feel they all have their own unique challenges. Yeah, I feel for me personally, textiles is the most, because there's so many different, like under the umbrella of textile, there's so many different materials and everything needs to be treated a certain way, and so that for me personally, textiles are the most challenging.